Welcome to the Friday Show, presented by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association. Their online stallion season auction is underway now through Saturday the 22nd. Seasons from nearly 80 stallions in Pennsylvania, Kentucky, New York, Maryland, and Ohio. Find out more and place a bid at thoroughbred.com. I'm Paulick Report bloodstock editor Joe Nevills, joined today by news editor Chelsea Hackbarth and Andrew Champagne, who you might recognize from all those winners he picked up in Saratoga from the Pink Sheet. Now, as you've probably seen, we recently had the Eclipse Award finalists for the 2021 racing season announced, and we all have feelings about it. So the theme of today is the Eclipse Awards Snub Outrage Index, where we're going to air some grievances about the horses that we feel like didn't get their due here. As you may or may not know, the Eclipse Awards are decided by a block of voters that includes the media, chart callers, racing officials. It's a broad segment of the industry that gets to choose these things, and sometimes they make some curious decisions. So if anyone wants to open it up here, what made you feel funny about this group?
So I suppose I'll go in, and first of all, it was a weird year. There's a lot of opinions out there. And Joe, you echoed mine in your article that you wrote for the Paulick Report. I'll direct people there for that shameless plug, since you gave me a shameless plug right in the intro. But it's one of those instances where, as a voter, you know, not everybody in the voting block is going to agree with stances you take. And personally, I'm fine with that. That's the purpose of a popular vote, in that, hey, disagreement is sometimes okay. We lose that sometimes, especially on Twitter, where it seems like nobody wants to have an actual conversation and everyone wants to just throw bombs behind a keyboard or a phone. That's fun sometimes. I would not recommend it as a 100% of your time pursuit. Having said that, there were a couple of things that really surprised me when you look at the list of finalists in a couple of categories. And once again, Joe and I agree on a few things, which really, I got to tell you, if we're trying to do a show with a little bit of back and forth, maybe we need differences of opinion at some point. Just saying, I want to make sure both of you get that memo. But one of the things that we agree on is the fact that we think the voting block got the sprint category wrong. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And I'll yield the floor to Joe if you want to take the baton back and run with it.
So our finalists in the male sprinter category were Aloha West, Flightline, and Jockey's Warrior. And this has me absolutely incensed. How do you miss Dr. Schivel on here? The horse he beat older competition consistently. He was a nose away from, he had the Breeders' Cup Sprint dead to rights. And you look at the other horses who made the finalists. Flightline is a fantastic horse. I'm not trying to talk him down. I'm not trying to poo-poo him in any way, but he gets into the finalists with exactly one graded stakes win, one grade one. It was a really fantastic one. It's going to show signs of amazing things to come for 2022. But you put his record up against Dr. Schivel's, and it pales in comparison. Then you look at Aloha West, who has about this much better than Dr. Schivel. Literally this much. That was the difference in the sprint. And he makes the finalists, and Dr. Schivel doesn't. Dr. Schivel consistently beat older company, something that neither Aloha West beat older company once. Flightline never beat older company. Jockey's Warrior never beat older company. He belongs there. Jockey's Warrior, I got no qualms with that one. But Dr. Schivel earns my highest ranking on the Eclipse Awards Snub Outrage Index. Dr. Schivel is a nuclear, threat level nuclear on my offense of why he's not on the list.
I'll be honest, Joe. I didn't have him on my ballot. He didn't face all that much in California. I mean, the sprint division out there, just until Flightline showed up, it was pretty much Dr. Schivel and one or two others that took turns beating each other all year. So I'm more inclined to go with, maybe it's my East Coast based self, but I'm more inclined to go with the ones that faced full fields and consistently beat them all year round.
So who's your top three then?
Aloha West, Flightline, and Jockey's Warrior. So,
okay, so you're part of the problem then.
See, this is why I love this show. I don't have to be the one that's causing the controversy. I can just sit back, relax, and watch the show. So As the great football coach and horse racing owner Bill Parcells said very often, you are what your record says you are. And we're going to get back to this a couple of different times. I'm old school. I like 3-year-olds that beat older horses. If this is strictly based on ability, if the Eclipse Awards were strictly based on ability and whatever brilliance is, Flightline wins going away. I understand that. He ran 3 times. His one grade 1 win came against restricted company. That was a 3-year-old race in the Malibu. It was a tremendous race. And yes, he beat Dr. Schivel. I understand that. I think a full year's body of work has to matter. I didn't have Jackie's Warrior as one of my 3 finalists. I'm not offended that he's there, but he didn't beat older horses either. And I understand he had an excuse in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. He came out of that race with an injury. I understand that. You are what your record says you are. Flightline won 1 grade 1 race against 3-year-olds. Jackie's Warrior won 1 grade 1 race against 3-year-olds. If Jackie's Warrior goes in, say, the Vosburg over the Gallant Bob, maybe I feel differently. Having said that, I think voters got the sprint category wrong. I did have Aloha West in my top 3, but not only do I not think Flightline deserves to be in there, and not only did I not have Jackie's Warrior in there, though I'm not surprised he was in, my top selection in that category, guys, isn't even a finalist. And that leads to one of those segues they teach you about in broadcasting school, and a shared gripe that this guy and I both have, centering around the winner of the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint Golden Pal. Now, my biggest gripe with older males in America this year was, with the exception of Nick Sco, they just weren't that good. Meanwhile, you look at Golden Pal, and I understand he only had 4 starts. To me, there's still a difference between 4 starts and 3 starts. The one dud that he fired was over in Europe. He comes back, runs really well twice, beats older horses in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. They could have gone around again, and I don't think Golden Pal was getting caught. Golden Pal was my top choice, not just as champion sprinter, but also as champion turf male, because as bad as the older males were on dirt, they were awful on turf this year compared to past years. And look,
putrid.
I'm old school. I miss when horses ran 8, 10, 12 times a year. For the most part, those days are done. But my goodness, if 1 grade 1 win is enough to get a horse an Eclipse Award nowadays, and in some cases it's a restricted grade 1 race, oh boy.
And I'm right with you there, Andrew. I had Golden Pal second in my sprint ballot and number 1 on turf. Typically for international heavy divisions, as the turf divisions tend to be, I weight a little more toward domestic horses, ones that have multiple starts in the U.S. versus ones that come over just for the Breeders' Cup or just for a big turf race in Saratoga and then go back along their merry way. And I think it's hard to argue that Golden Pal wasn't the most dominant turf horse in America going either long or short. When he ran against American turf horses on American soil, on American grass, he dominated. He absolutely destroyed a field at Keeneland. He beat the best field of turf sprinters in America in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, made it look easy. I mean, you look at where he broke in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint and where he finished, there was never a horse within a time zone of him. There was no other turf horse that was that consistently dominant throughout the season. And the fact that he doesn't even make it on the ballot on these, either for turf horse or sprint. Sprint, I understand there's always going to be the dirt bias. There's no getting around that. He was always going to be a long shot for that. But as a turf horse, that's disrespectful for me. Golden Pal on my Eclipse outrage, snub outrage index was a threat level high. That's the second highest level behind nuclear. I understand why it happened. North American racing doesn't terribly respect turf, doesn't terribly respect sprints compared to dirt and going long distance. Golden Pal is up against it, but seeing what we saw in the other divisions and just how much Golden Pal slapped everyone else around, I'm befuddled.
So you said up against it. I just want to follow that up with the logical question of up against what? The older males in the American Turf Division, there were a couple that showed real promise earlier in the year. It really looked like Domestic Spending was going to be a very, very good horse. Then he goes in the race formerly known as the Arlington Million, doesn't get the job done there against probably the worst field in the race's history, and then we don't see him again. There just wasn't any logical candidate based in America the full year that could have potentially been a candidate for that honor. Now, the winners of both the Breeders' Cup Mile and the Breeders' Cup Turf were both finalists in that category, and I thoroughly understand that. Space Blues is a heck of a racehorse in particular, but I just don't see how Golden Pal, based on talent and accomplishments, wasn't a finalist there.
I had Domestic Spending on top and Golden Pal second in the turf division myself. I think Domestic Spending put together a heck of a first part of the year. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to allow Golden Pal to have just 4 starts and be right there in the finalists, then I think Domestic Spending also earns the same right. His 4 starts may have all been clustered in the first 8 months of it, 6-8 months of the year, but it's the same concept.
And, sometimes that happens. If there isn't a clear divisional leader that goes into the Breeders' Cup and wins it, sometimes you got to look at that first half of the season. I think, I'm guilty of this as much as just about probably any Eclipse voter out there of sort of waiting the second half of the season more than the first half. But a grade 1's a grade 1. Granted, those have different weights. I'd rather win the Derby than, say, the Malibu, but it's still a grade 1 on the record.
Speaking of Derby winners, I don't think any of us have the Derby first place finisher on our ballot, did we?
I didn't have the first place finisher or the one who could end up being the first place finisher, actually.
Ditto.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've gotten quite a bit of vocal response to is the fact that I did not vote for trainer Bob Baffert for champion trainer. I did not vote for any of his charges that stayed with him for the entire year on my ballot. I did not vote for any of the owners that stuck with him after he announced the Derby positive. Allowing for some time to move horses. I understand that sometimes there's some logistical things, but that didn't really eliminate anybody that would have made my ballot anyway. Interesting thing about the response to this, looking over social media, looking over email responses, I was accused of both being comparable to Fox News and being comparable to the woke mob. So I think I shot it straight down the middle on this. I feel pretty good about being right on this. I feel like when you're accused of being both sides of the spectrum, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle there. So thank you. I appreciate your very sometimes respectful, sometimes very disrespectful comments on my ballot on that.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat on that. I got several people on Twitter saying, revoke his ballot immediately. Revoke a ballot because I disagree with you? No, that's not the way things work. And that's one of the reasons I mentioned what I did at the outset of this show. Joe has an opinion. I've got my hands backwards here. Joe's got a particular opinion. Chelsea's got a particular opinion. I've got a particular opinion. If we get outvoted, we'll sleep just fine.
Yeah.
That's the reason this is a popular vote. You don't always have to agree with everybody on everything, and you don't always have to think everything is an outrage. We're better than this, people. Have conversations. Don't throw bombs.
And this is a show that's specifically about outrage, and we have to say this.
Yes, the fact that I had to say that, and I'm not even a full-time contributor on this show, my goodness, people.
Also, Medina Spirit doesn't care if he wins the Eclipse Award or not. So let's just...
I don't think Medina Spirit cares about a whole lot now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We'll go with someone else in the barn. Corniche doesn't care either.
Corniche doesn't care.
Yeah.
Not at all whatsoever. To Corniche, when the Eclipse Awards are given out, it's just another Thursday.
Mm-hmm. Now, we all have our stances. We all have our agreements and disagreement, but we can all agree that Steeplechase is an abstain category, right?
No.
Right.
No. It was so easy this year, Joe. It was so easy.
Not this one.
Now, I will say that Andrew mentioned people threatening that you should have your Eclipse vote revoked, and I've gotten that one a few times on Steeplechase. And I just want to put out there that I don't vote for Steeplechase for the same reason that NBA writers don't vote for the Eclipse Awards. It's not my scene. I do it more out of respect. I don't want to vote for something that I don't have the knowledge for and potentially muddle up the voting pool. If I don't vote for anything, I can't potentially be the deciding vote in something that I have no stake in and no interest in. I do it out of
As the
respect.
Paulick
Not
Report's- as the Paulick Report's news editor, I made a distinct effort this year to cover steeplechase racing. Do you read the Paulick Report, Bloodstock editor Joe Nevills?
we have a great website. I really should read it sometime.
I made a distinct effort to cover all of their grade 1 races, okay? Their information was there at your fingertips.
Well, then perhaps I need to do a better job. I will say that I watched more highlight than steeplechase racing this year. The Langans brothers, Benny and Douglas, they're the future of the sport in highline.
How did we get to highline and Eclipse Award conversation?
Okay.
Chelsea, I'm going to do us a favor and circle things back. I
Appreciate
think one of the reasons that I've got some level of confidence in steeplechase voting some years, not all years, but some years, is the fact that I do a lion's share of my work at this place right back here, which has 2 grade 1 steeplechase races and makes an effort to honor the steeplechasers that are out there, and some of whom are just tremendous stories. And I think it's a funny footnote, the fact that the one time the Mean Queen lost, I picked her on top. She might have been my best bet of the day, and she bolted and threw the rider in the stretches. I think we might have a guest on Chelsea's feed there, at least for a moment. But no, I thought the Mean Queen stood head and shoulders above the rest of the steeplechase division. And Snap Decision's a darn good horse. Baltimore Bucko was a darn good horse, but the Mean Queen should win that category in a pretty decisive victory.
She was so cool.
So keeping the conversation on Saratoga, the winner of probably the biggest race on Saratoga's calendar, the Travers Stakes, was Essential Quality, who naturally was a finalist for champion 3-year-old male, ridden by Luis Saez. Luis Saez, who was not a finalist for champion jockey. And I got to say, this is another one that befuddles me. I mean, he rode so many big horses over the year. He had over 1,500 starts over the course of the year. So it's not like he was just popping in for the big money mounts and not riding every single day. The man put in the work. He rode some of the best horses in the country. He's going to have at least one Eclipse Award winner under his belt, if not more. I'm a little confused here, guys. How does a jockey like Luis Saez not make the final 3?
So I don't have a problem with him not winning. Joel Rosario set the earnings record. He should win.
I put him on top 2.
I voted Luis Saez second. He won the riding title at this place right back here. He won the riding title at Keeneland. We're being told that Keeneland and Saratoga matter, and this guy was head and shoulders above the rest of the room. He's not a finalist?
I don't think we can say it's a rough riding aversion either, based on one of the other finalists having a 30-day suspension this year. So,
which is really saying something that, you know, our 3 finalists are Arad Ortiz Jr., Flavian Prat, and Joel Rosario. I guess it's saying something that Ortiz made the final cut, having missed a significant portion of the year due to suspensions, because let's not forget that he started the year sitting down for a few days after punching Paco Lopez in the jaw. So he's missed a pretty significant riding time this year and still managed to, and don't get me wrong, he won a lot of big races. I'm not saying it's not merited from the numbers, but that's going to be one that's going to be kind of hard to look at the picture if the guy who finished the year kind of putting a bunch of guys in the rail ends up holding a trophy.
So really quick before we go into serious discussion, can we just give Jason Beam a tip of the hat for the first line of his 2021 was a dumpster fire song being Arad punched Paco in the face?
Tip of the hat to you.
I'm not wearing a hat, but I'm tipping mine anyway.
So, as Andrew mentioned...
To be fair, hold on. Oisin Murphy, the champion rider over in Britain, was disqualified for cocaine or suspended for cocaine for a significant part of the year and then turned in his license after winning this year's championship so he could focus on rehab. So it's not really an American Eclipse Award voter problem.
I mean... You're not wrong. So, as Andrew mentioned, I put Joel Rosario on top there. So my level of outrage for him, for Saez not making the final cut, is significant, but not overly bubbling over the surface. He was just a mild on my outrage index. A few others that we don't really have time to mention here, but I want to make sure my full outrage index makes the list here. I promised it on Twitter. I have to deliver.
Is there a graphic somewhere with this?
Well, We'll have to talk to our producer afterward.
I think our producer's slacking.
we're gonna have to see if we can get that done. But so going from the top, Nuclear, Dr. Schivel in the sprint category, high Golden Pal for male sprinter and turf, moderate Angie Moore, the breeder of Nick's Go, did not make champion breeder. That one kind of did the most with the least, only had, I think, 6 starters or so, and one of them happens to be the best horse in training. I like to see that one at least make the cut. Mild, Saez for jockey and Pletcher for trainer didn't make it. Pletcher had a fantastic year. I can't argue. I believe it was Asmussen, Brown, and Brad Cox. That's a hard 3 to crack. Like,
Somebody had to be 4th there.
Yes. Asmussen was 4th for me, but I get it if someone wanted to put him on there. So it's mild. Like, I would have preferred to see it. I'm a little outraged, but I'm not like, breaking windows or anything over it. So that's my Eclipse Outrage Index. Is there anybody else in any of the categories that you guys felt strongly about that you want to, air that grievance, like work that rage out on camera?
See, I don't, but a lot of that is just because Joe makes my points for me, and he does so in incredibly effective fashion. I just sit there in the background and go, yeah, what he said.
That's okay. Everyone needs their hype, man.
Hey, and I'm good at that.
I have a couple, but we're running out of time, so let it ride.
We are desperately out of time, folks. So before we close off, I want to make a little bit of a mention. Andrew, we do have him on for more of a reason than just he's an interesting guy with good opinions. Andrew will be helping us out later in the year with our Derby Top 20 segment. He'll be providing some insight on who he thinks are going to be the most likely candidates for the big one in the first Saturday in May. Andrew, you want to tell us a little bit about that before we sign off?
Ask me if I'm including Baffert horses.
Andrew, are you including Baffert horses?
I don't know. You'll have to read the first one.
That's how you draw intrigue, folks. That's how you draw intrigue.
Is it though?
Chelsea, do not question my promotional tactics.
Well, that's all we've got for this week's edition of the Friday Show. Thanks so much to the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association for sponsoring this episode. Once again, their online stallion season auction is going on right now through Saturday the 22nd. Get there, bid on some stallion seasons, make your bookings for 2022. They got a really good list here. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Spread the word on this. You like us, right? If you're watching this, you've made it this far, you must seem to like us. I'm sure people
at the very least you like him and you like her. I don't know about me, but you have to like either one of these two. Exactly.
So, help us out a little bit, get the word out, get us some more traffic on this, and, help us make better content. On behalf of Chelsea and Andrew Champagne, I've been Joe Nevills. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.